Alive. I am joined by our special guest and my dear friend, Alexa Wayne, author of a new novel, which I had the pleasure of editing. And it was just released, a couple days ago, right?
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, please, as we kind of warm up and wait for some people to trickle in, I'd love for you to tell our audience all about yourself and how long you've been writing.
Well, I've been writing from when I was a very young kid, like way before I knew how to write. I was actually writing, scribbling on paper, and pretending to read and all that. So my imagination was really overactive when I was a young child, and it just kept going. So at first I've been writing in French because I'm from Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that writing in French is very difficult because in Quebec people are very harsh on French. So even though my French was above average and my vocabulary very elaborated, it didn't matter. Publishers would tell me that I had no chance, that I was not cut for the job, and that I would never be an author. So it really hurt me, and I decided, okay then, if French is not working, then I'll try in English. And in English, I found that people were more open, they were more understanding, and editors are way kinder in English as well.
Got it.
And because I was aiming, especially to, be popular, like not just Canada, but the States and even Europe and stuff, I wanted to have an American editor. And that's when you came in and helped me. But the first novel you edited is not the novel that came out a few days ago. It's a short novel. I wanted to start slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mrs. Blackwood, it's pretty much, well, the blurb says it all. After being attacked by creatures she never thought existed, Coralie woke up to a new life as Mrs. Blackwood, and yet has next to no recollection of getting married. Coralie never thought it possible to fall for someone so fast. Her husband, Mr. Blackwood, confessed to be of both vampire and werewolf blood, and promised to free her from him once she would be safe from his enemy, which they realized was closer than they thought, and again changed Coralie's life when she learned of her own bloodline. And Mrs. Blackwood is the first installment and the opening to the Impaler series.
Fantastic, which I will be asking you about that. But first, I would like to talk a little bit about a couple things. This is not the first work that we've done together, but it is the first one that's like a big published work. So yeah. I'm also really proud about that. It's the first book I've had my name on in, 4 or 5 years, I think, that's been published, aside from being one of the many proofreaders on a LARP-related project. So I'm very excited about that, and I really hope people check out the book. It is available over on Amazon. My other project is actually a digital live-action role-playing game, and this is the fourth one I've done now. And this one is called First Bite, Second Birth. And it is all about vampires. And the premise of this game, which you play, you embody your character. The premise of the game is that you, as your character, you wake up and you're a new vampire. And all you have in the room with you is a computer with a link to a hangout. Just like kind of the one we're talking on now. And you click on that link and you connect with other people. But they're all other new vampires. And you kind of have to figure some stuff out as you go. So it's a fun game that's played over Hangout. And if you want to check that out, it's bit.ly/firstbitesecondbirth. It's super fun. I had a lot of fun writing it. It's an empowerment LARP, meaning that you can feel empowered as a person by playing it. You can play for that if you'd like. And yeah, so that's kind of what I've been working on that's vampire related. I have some other supernatural stuff going on too, and this is not the only paranormal thing that the both of us work in. So I'm gonna wing it a little bit because the questions I had just kind of went because I realized I can't have Twitch up on my phone and look at the questions on my phone. So yeah, but I would like to know from you kind of give a hint about this. What's the deal with Vlad? Why did you use Vlad in your novels? And probably the wider question, since you are also the vampire expert, what is the history of vampires and how does Vlad tie into that?
Well, I did a whole article on Gothic Bite magazine that you can go check. It's gothicbitemagazine.com on the origin of vampires. Vampires are actually they've been around for millennia in the global human history. So it's everywhere. You're gonna find folklore in Africa. You're gonna find them in India. You're gonna find them in Egypt. Name it, everywhere. Not just Europe, but everywhere. Even in some Native American cultures.
Oh wow!
Not every tribe, because every tribe of Native American, they have their own folklore, their own myths as well. But some of them, like the Navajo, they have the skinwalkers, and they have some that resemble vampires. So they all have different names from where they come from, but they have common ground as well. They have like common characteristics that sort of like ties them all to the word vampire, which is immortality, blood, bites. Because the word vampire, even though it comes from French originally, adapted to Middle English, it actually means, even in it comes also from Scandinavian language, but like very old. It's very hard to pinpoint where in the Scandinavian region it would be from, but it would mean hard bite.
Wow.
So, yeah, the word vampire basically means hard bite. And there was, just like there was a witch hunt, there was also a vampire hunt that occurred. Because let's face it, back then they didn't have much to do, right? It was either working, drinking, or making children.
Yeah.
It's not like they had a TV, to sit and watch.
Right, they had their stories.
That's it. Even novels were not common beside the Bible. What are you gonna find?
Mm-hmm.
There's not much going on. And depending where you're from too, it's like the Bible. If you're Catholic or in a region,
Right.
it's like that. But like if you're in Africa, not sure. Not at that time, anyways, because we're talking before the Middle Ages. So, and when the Middle Ages were, that's where like full vampires. And there are some cases in history that actually shows that there are true vampires. So those are actually scrolls that were written by people that had a certain name in their region, and people that knew how to write. So we're talking Middle Ages. So you had some that the encounters would be that people recently did, and they were seen after walking around the village. But people back then didn't know the process of
They didn't know the science, basically.
No, that's it. They didn't know. So it could have been someone resembling someone that died, and then they would go to where the person was buried, and then you would see the person was inflated, and there was a bit of blood, the nails grew, but they didn't know that. That's what happens. Protein is the last thing to stop. Fiber is one of the last things to stop. So of course, hairs are gonna grow, men are gonna grow a beard, and all that. So they had a very different meaning of what vampires were. And then in the 15th century, Vlad arrived. His real name being Vladislav Vasilevich III of the House of Dracula. But
that's a lot.
Yes. And the word Dracula came because of the reputation of Vladislav. Because the word Dracula basically means dragon. It doesn't mean demon. it means dragons, but to them in Romanian dragon, it's it could be seen evil, but mostly cunning, sly, all of those.
Right.
And Vlad was also someone who had a traumatic past. He was actually sent to the enemy of his father when he was young to be kept as a sort of a treaty between the two countries not to attack each other for a time being. And during that time, like a sort of prisoner of war, but to prevent the war to happen. And so Vlad was forced to watch people being tortured. He was a very young child at that point, and he was forced to watch people being tortured. And he was tortured himself. And after that, he was sent back to his father. But don't think that the common mistake that people do is thinking that Vlad was actually a bad person. No. In Romania, Vladislav is actually seen as a hero.
Wow.
He actually pretended to be a psychopath to protect his country from being invaded. So,
wow, so he's pretty much like a patriot.
Yeah, he is. It's like he pretended to be the Joker, but in reality he was Batman. So what he did is like, well, he from his childhood witnessed people being tortured. Then he was captured and tortured. He realized that, okay, the best way to have people not invade my country is actually to scare them so much that they're not going to want to come here. So that's basically what he did. He did have the forest of impalement. So in his backyard, basically, because he had two castles. And one of them, he had, his whole backyard was people impaled. But those people were people trying to invade his country. They were very bad criminals. It is false to say that had no heart. It's not true. He loved his wife to death. He loved his family to the point that when he was building his Canary Castle, so the one that's on the mountain, very famous, with the Romanian flag, well, that one was a fortress, and it was built very, very high, so he could see anyone coming from anywhere. Because in that time, Romania was not as big, and it was called Vlach. And they were always at war with Hungary, and there was the Ottoman Empire as well. He was friends with the Sultan, and there's a reason why I mentioned that. And so what he did was while the castle was being built, he called all the nobles under the pretext that there was going to be a ball. But he remembered that when he was young, his parents were always bullied by the other nobles of other countries. So what he did was when they arrived, he had all his guards ready to force them to work to build his castle. And he showed, if you don't do what I told you to do, which is build my castle, here's what's going to happen to you. And then he made an example and impels, saying you're never going to laugh at Romania again. And then the fact that he drank the blood of his enemies, that actually is not something that he came up with. He took it from the Ottomans, from Turkey.
Wow. So it's something that actually came from a culture other than his own, and yet he was sort of associated with it, which is really interesting when you think about other things in history, like the stereotype of scalping, always associated with Native people, and that didn't originate in their culture. Yeah. So that's a really interesting way to think about it, and also knowing that his parents had been bullied puts a real different spin on it. So is that why you chose to incorporate Vlad and Vlad-related things in your novels?
Yes, I always like the outcasts, and I always like the people that are super, super smart. I value intelligence over anything else. And And yet, when you read about his life, when you read about who he truly was, that man protected his country. He was tortured many times. Even like his country was had a treaty with another one, and when he said, "I want to go at war with this because they're gonna invade us if we don't, and if we ally together, we can beat them." Well, actually, that person sent a letter to the Pope and had Vlad in prison.
Wow.
But the letter had all sorts of mistakes in it that a voivode and a prince would not have made. Voivode is actually a Romanian word saying, because there's no real translation for it, it means that he is the ruler and he is at the front of the line. He doesn't hide behind his army, he's going to lead them into war.
Wow.
So apparently Vlad had many scars all over his body because it was always the first in the front of the battle. Because he had a brother, his brother was the king, but when he died, then he had to do all of it himself, and even lost his rank a few times during his lifetime. And so I find that his life is so fascinating, so it's either too romanticized or people see him as a monster. So I try to bring him in, and yes, he's going to be a supernatural being, but through that, I am actually going to teach some historical facts about him.
Wow, so you're using the novels also as an educational tool to teach people a little bit more about who he was. That's really neat. That's really neat.
I even want to bring in like his ultimate enemy. I really maybe that's why I love Batman so much, but I'm gonna bring his Joker into the story.
That's fantastic. So I want to switch gears a little bit and tell me about, because Vlad, although it's in the same universe, he's not like the central figure or anything like that. In the beginning of Mrs. Blackwood, right? So
he's only mentioned.
He's just mentioned. So tell me a little bit about how this supernatural world and vampires specifically play into your novel, and also tell me about the types of vampires, because every time I mention that I'm running a vampire digital art, people are like, what kind of vampires? Are they like Interview with the Vampire? Are they like vampires in other types of LARPs? Are they sparkly vampires? And my answer is more complicated, so I'm going to talk second, but I want to know specifically about the vampires in your book and how you determine which lore to apply to the vampires in your world.
Okay, well, the vampires that I use, like in Mrs. Blackwood, is actually a good example because the vampires I'm going with, there are going to be different depending on where they're from, because I want to respect the folklore of the places they're from. So if they are from Africa, they are going to be mostly from the Zulu mythology. Well, if they are from actual England, well, they're going to be a little more like the folklore from there. So I actually try to be classic. So by that I mean Anne Rice is a good example of a classic vampire lore. What she did though that was different than Bram Stoker with Dracula is that she brought in Lestat, who shows the cruelty of the vampire.
And that's very popularized, and I think it really influences a lot of people's perception of vampires. Because I know the first vampire thing I really got into was when I was, I'm going to show how old I am, when I was a teenager and Interview with the Vampire came out in the theaters, and I was allowed to see it. And, of course, I was like, oh my gosh, Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, oh! And I liked Louis better than Lestat, but, you know, Lestat was pretty fascinating.
Stop whining! You're gonna be beautiful forever. For you. Me was Lestat all the way. I think I'm just attracted to psychotic.
Maybe we're always on different teams, right? Star Trek, you like Lorca, I like Riker. You know, you also really like Data. It's so true. But we would never fight over a guy. We would never fight over a guy. I mean, like, your husband and my boyfriend have a couple similarities, right? But we would never. I feel like we always pick really different people in fiction that we're interested in. But I want to know, because there are some heavy romance elements too, of course, in Mrs. Blackwood, big time, big time. Maybe even more than the other pieces of your work I read.
Normally, I don't write. I consider my novels not to be specifically romance because in my novels there's going to be maybe one romance scene.
Mm-hmm.
But that one, it focuses on it because I'm really bringing in, how can I say this, like the bond that can happen between the vampire and the human.
And you're also bringing in, it's kind of a little bit of an intro to the elements of your world, having read some of your other work. I think it's a good introduction to it. So that's also really cool. So in my world, and of course this is for a LARP that I'm doing, it's a contemporary setting, and the characters are strongly built by the players because we're dealing with some very sensitive themes. It's an empowerment LARP and it's meant to play close to home, meaning if you want to deal with issues of trauma or bullying or anything like that, you can, but it means you need to participate in the character building because I'm not comfortable with someone just saying, make my character bullied and have me write that in. And so going along with that, the vampires and their abilities are really largely up to the players. So we might have a sparkly vampire or two, but we're also going to have, probably the majority of them are going to be, potentially, killers who really want to take revenge on the world for the traumas they suffered as mortals. And those are the kind of...
That can be also animalistic, like
30
Days of Night.
Yes.
Where there is nothing, absolutely nothing good out of them. They're just pure psychopaths that don't know the difference between good and bad. To them, everything goes. And humans are...
Yeah, it's possible, and it depends on what the players want to do, but it's possible that once turned, suddenly one of these people becomes very, very evil, or they discover there aren't really as many consequences to their actions. And we want to explore that a lot. The examples I gave were like a woman who was afraid to walk down an alley because she gets catcalled and followed in her mortal life, or a black man who gets pulled over by a police officer in the United States who fears for his life. He's afraid he's going to get shot. Well, once you're a vampire, it's not really much of a problem anymore if someone tries to hurt you or shoot you or something.
And it's so awesome.
Thank you.
I hope I'm gonna say this right, but when you have actually a good example is Midnight Texas of Charlotte Harris. She has that one African American vampire.
Mm-hmm.
What is awesome is
the
look that you can give them.
Yeah,
oh my god.
I definitely...
And at the same time, it's so like, I don't want to be alone with him in an alley because it's like, I don't know what to think. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I definitely want the players to be able to pick those abilities, and then First Bite, Second Birth also, as a LARP, has an interesting mechanic, and my partner came up with this one kind of as an addition, because I do very rules-light freeform games, so it's like we're just telling a story together. It would be just like us talking, only we're our characters. But he came up with a cool mechanic, and that is I have the players select their character's blood type when they create their character, and they can select whatever they want. It doesn't have to be their own in real life. They can select whatever, and I will have a list of attributes that get assigned to the character based upon what they pick. So there's like a kind of really random thing that they also get. And these might be things that are commonly associated with vampires, or it might be like an extra trait, or maybe an easy to portray physical feature, like they have veins popping out or something. And they kind of get that extra feature, and they're probably going to have one or more other people in the same game who share it because of this random thing. And I do think it's interesting because, and I know you definitely go into this in your books a little bit about the reasons why and like the genetics behind supernatural, paranormal stuff. And I think it was cool that he suggested I add a little bit of that in. Basically, like if you have, type B blood, when you become a vampire, maybe you lose 5 years of your memory or something like that. I thought that was a really neat suggestion, and it's all opt-in on my LARP, so you don't have to play it that way. But it's going to be pretty cool when they find that some other people have the same thing, and I think blood type was a cool mechanic. But speaking of that, you do sometimes talk about the technical stuff. And it's very interesting because your writing is very poetic and beautiful, but you talk about the technical stuff sometimes too. The genetic reasons. It almost reminds me of how Michael Crichton writes about, like in Jurassic Park, he would write all the cool, fantastical stuff and describe these dinosaurs, but then he'd write about the why and the how. So tell me how you kind of add that element about genetics or kind of having a scientific explanation and why you've done that in your books.
Well, I've been told that I am like a BBC type of person.
Mm-hmm.
So when I write something, I like to give facts as much as I can, because one of the things that always bugged me while writing vampires, but mostly reading vampires, one of my favorites is Janine Frost. She's one of the authors that I like very, very much, and she has her own flat series that is called A Night Prince Novel Worth Reading. The cover is misleading. It's more of a mystery type of book than it is a romance book. She influenced my writing a lot, and I've read her books. I read Sheldon Harris, wonderful. I read Anne Rice. I even read Silence Lot from Stephen King, who's my favorite author, and everything was always missing. And that was, if the woman enjoys it, the bite, how can she enjoys it, but someone else, when he's the victim, is, dying from it, in agony. So the bite was never truly explained. So I made some research as much as I could on animals. I went into the animal kingdom, plugged myself in front of BBC Earth and Blue Planet, name it, to try to find a scientific explanation as to why one would be enjoyable while the other would be agony. So that was something that was very dear to me. I had to find that. I'm not going to explain because I want people, of course, to read it. How I was able to find a true reason behind it. But yeah, I find it's very important, and that's what I like about your LARP, is that you try to back up with some scientific, and which is very cool because vampires are not necessarily synonym of technology. So the fact that they wake up and they have a link to something, because their maker, they could be 2,000 years old.
Yeah, and
they could be 10 years old. So I find that to come back to a bit of the differences between vampires, you have Anne Rice, you have Stephen King, you have Bram Stoker, you have Sheldon Harris, and then you have Stephanie Meyer, and you have even J.R. Ward with their Black Dagger Brotherhood, I think. Yes, they're all different. All of them are different. Sheldon Harris, I find she actually opened the door to new vampires for a new type of vampire writing.
I love her work. I got to meet her. You saw the picture. I got to meet her. She was in Philadelphia doing a book signing for one of her books, and I was able to go and have a brief interaction with her, and she was just really cool.
Awesome. She's amazing. Me, I don't know if you thought about actually asking a question why Louisiana is so popular with vampires. Why French people are very attractive to vampires. But there is some kind of background to it. Even in Doctor Who, he actually made a mention to it that France existed on its own little world. French people are known to be very open to culture. Like if you come to Montreal, you're going to see we have everyone for everyone. Like, we have little Portugal, we have little Romania, we have little Italia, name it, we have everything. And we welcome everybody. And I think that's why vampires are very attracted to that, because French people don't really care. I don't know if it's unique to Montreal or something, but it is some kind of, it's like, you're cool, I'm cool, as long as you're not hurting me, I mean, it's fine, So, yeah, because there is always that New Orleans factor in many, many books. It's always mentioned somewhere. And I actually made some research on that, and the reason always came down to how French people are more open to other cultures and stuff, and so they would ask this question: if you're pale and we only see you at night, if you're my neighbor, I never see you in the day, and stuff like that. So yeah, that was one of the reasons.
I just want to. I want to give a shout out to the Moon King in our chat right now. The Moon King is asking us some questions about where our ghost hunting gear is, and I'm like, well, we're not hunting ghosts today. I'm not above doing some ghost hunting next time I visit you. That would be pretty fun. We could do that live, so thank you for that idea, Moon King. We may very well do that. And you're seeing light because we have lights on the in our houses. We are not necessarily vampires ourselves, but I am running a vampire LARP. You can learn more about that at bit.ly//first bite second birth. And so we do create stories about vampires, but we are not vampires. And you can see light because we have lights on. It's getting pretty dark out here. It's about time. Yeah, it's about time for it to be safe for vampires to start venturing out.
It's dusk, so vampires should start walking around.
Yeah. So hey, heads up, vampires out there. It's up. It's your time. Come on the chat. Talk to us. We'd love to meet you. I'm joking, but in Gothic Bite, I understand there is more discussion about vampires and whether they're real. And Alexa, I would like to get your opinion on that. Do you think vampires are real, or just something we write about in fantasy novels and LARPs?
Yeah, I actually mentioned a bit of that in my article about the original vampires. Because when I was a kid, my grandmother, being from New Brunswick, she believed in a lot of folklores like vampires and werewolves. The folklores of New Brunswick they are pretty much the same as Louisiana's folklores, because they're Acadian peoples, basically the same history. They're quite similar. And so yeah, she would actually put lights, light candles in the windows, shut the door, lock the doors at a certain hour, especially Halloween. She would be extra careful, put some salt at every entrance and stuff. So I grew up wondering if they were true or not. And then when I did my research and I realized, hey, they're everywhere around the world. They've been in our history, folklore history, for way over a millennium. Way over that. We're talking BC, they were, some records on the ancient aliens, you can see that. So I'm like, either we ran them to extinction, or they never existed, or they could be real. I mean, some people believe in werewolves. The more we go, the more we see, with Paranormal Witness or Terror in the Woods, all those shows, the people come out and, talk about those strange little towns that have those strange people. And so real vampires, with supernatural big powers, maybe not. But maybe there are some type of people that evolve differently than us.
That's awesome, and it's very interesting to consider, especially because you always have the science behind it. While we have a second here, since we do have some people in chat and watching the stream right now, you can support our stream. with a Prime subscription. If you have Amazon Prime in the United States, it is free for you because you already have Prime. You just have to log in by clicking that crown up at the top of your screen, and it will prompt you to log in, and then you can subscribe to this channel for free, and it does give us a couple bucks, and we appreciate that. You can also support us by reading and purchasing Mrs. Blackwood over on Amazon.com. If you search for Mrs. Blackwood or Alexa Wayne, or is it under Alexa Wayne or A. Wayne?
A. Wayne.
It's under A. Wayne. Okay, so if you look for Mrs. Blackwood or A. Wayne, you will find her author page. You will find the book. You can buy it. That helps us to keep making books, and I, of course, am her editor, so I want to keep making books. I like reading them and getting paid to read them and help restructure that story. The other thing you can do is check out the LARP. You can find us on Facebook, too. Just look up First Bite, Second Birth on Facebook, or the Geek Initiative LARPs, and you can connect with us there and learn all about that adventure. And that LARP is actually going to be streamed. So if you're wondering why we're not hunting ghosts or why we aren't actually vampires, just come back when I stream the LARP, because then I will actually be playing a vampire. And you'll get some more there. I'm actually thinking about playing a vampire who, she's modern, she's from this time, but I have it so, like I said, the players really get to customize their character, and I am not going to be playing the seniorum, which is the term I have for the older vampire. I'm going to be playing a younger vampire. I will be the Nouveau V. I hope I said that right.
Yes.
Alright, yay! I said French correctly. So Alexa helped me translate some stuff for the LARP because I wanted some of it to be in French. And I didn't want to use stuff that other vampire franchises had used. There's a big franchise in LARP called Vampire the Masquerade, and there's a lot of positive changes going on in that community, but it also has kind of a negative reputation in some ways, and I don't want to copy them. I don't play that game. I did work on a couple rule books there, but it's not really my thing. I'm kind of splitting and doing my own thing that's entirely different. Everybody comes up with their own type of vampire in this game. And I am not playing one of the seniorum. I am playing a younger vampire, and I was thinking about somebody who dresses like I did in high school. I was in the 90s. I used to wear, like, bell-bottoms and, like, a bunch of hippie stuff, and it was really weird, and then, like, bell-bottom jeans came in style, and I was like, hey, what's up? I was already doing this and wearing my mom's clothes. But I was thinking my vampire would maybe dress like that, and she got turned, so maybe she was into, like, peace and, like, free love, and, you know, maybe she, like, smoked a lot of weed, and then, for whatever reason, she got turned, and that kind of changes her relationship with those things. Being a vampire, you know, not the most peaceful way to eat food. Maybe she was a vegetarian. Might not be the best idea now, because then you'll kind of die if you don't have blood. So that's, I think, where I'm going with my character, and I'm really, really excited to see what everybody else comes up with. I really, really can't wait, and just to see all the different lore that people will come up with. And that's what I'm going to do, and I think mine is going to be interested in, like, not sleeping. Here's a good question for a vampire expert. So I know if I were a vampire, you know, people always say things like, okay, I'm a woman. If I were a man, the first thing I would do is, like, try to pee or something, right? Because you think about what it's like to be different and to have different parts, right? So if I was a human and I became a vampire, I think, like, the first things I would do, I would try to stay up and not sleep. So when the sun came up, obviously I wouldn't walk out in the sun, but I feel like I'd totally just, like, lock myself in a sun-free space and see how long I could stay up without anything bad happening. Because humans, of course, we have very detrimental effects if we stay up for more than a couple days. Not that I know from personal experience, I totally do. But vampires, I don't know what would happen. I would probably, even as my real self, as a vampire, I would do drugs. In real life, not my thing. I have some prescription meds, but that's pretty much it. As a vampire, I'd be like, yo, bring it on. Does it affect me? Does it do stuff? What else could vampires do? they tackle this a bit in the True Blood world, in the Southern Vampire Mysteries, as Charlene Harris wrote them, and that is that they can have sex and not get AIDS. They can get something else that is vampire specific, but they're not getting the diseases that plague humans. It doesn't affect them. So my question for you, Alexa, is if I were a vampire and I wanted to do a lot of drugs and have some promiscuous sex and deprive myself of sleep and do some more daring things, maybe like go skydiving or jump from tall distances, what would happen to my body?
Okay, well, there are two schools of thoughts on that. You have the ones that when the sun comes up, their body grows heavy, they are basically dead during the day. That's why this is like their most vulnerable time. And then you have also the school thought that it doesn't necessarily affect them as long as they are in an enclosed place where UV doesn't get to them. Because if you go to a tanning salon, you're gonna die, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the UV. And as for drugs and stuff, remember that when you're a vampire, basically all your organs are inert; they're dead. So, and because the vampires have a healing factor, if they do eat our food, well, because their body cannot, get rid of it, they need to drink acid to get rid of it, because that's what we have us to, make the food go away. It's like to reduce it to nothing, and then it's processed.
That makes sense.
So then, because they have no motor system, no organs are working, well, it has to go somewhere. So for the drugs, it would be the same thing. You would have to get rid of it, but you can't. You would have to, resort to things that would not be that great, which drinking acid might not be very pleasant, even as a vampire.
Yeah.
So doing drugs would be and I mean drugs that I would mean like anything like heroin, like maybe stuff like that. Smoking doesn't really do anything because you're exhaling.
Right.
So that's
and their cells would like heal at such a rapid rate that if something cancerous couldn't really develop.
That's it. But anything that is injected or something, you cannot get rid of it. So you would have, to result to something as, dreadful and very, very, not pleasant, like acid or something, to get rid of the excess. So because your body cannot process anything, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to stay there. So, and because of the healing factor, you are not going to feel the drugs because your body's going to, heal it right away.
Wow.
So you cannot have the effect. Smoking is because it's a stress thing. You can still be stressed as a vampire, so the cigarettes comes in.
In a lot of vampire stories, that seems to be a theme. Something happens and the vampires get very, very stressed. They are known to have a certain type of OCD. They have certain mental illnesses. So a vampire gets stressed, right? They have some difficult circumstances, big life adjustment when you become a vampire. Can't go out during the day. Kind of sucks. Haha, pun intended. Yeah. Your relationships are forever changed. Becoming a vampire results in a bunch of stresses. And then vampires often seem to get into some shady business, right? Or they're hunted down, or they're misunderstood. So vampires are under a lot of stress. We know that as humans, chronic stress does some horrible stuff to us, right? It can make us really sick. It can make our hair fall out. Not fun. Been there. Not wanting to go back there again. But if I were a vampire and I were under chronic stresses, what would happen to my body?
Your body, physically, your body is always going to heal. Mentally is another thing. That's where Charlene Harris, I believe she was not the first one to bring it, but she's the first one to have popularized it because of HBO that brought it up. It's that vampire blood is somewhat intoxicating. So, what I did, because I didn't want to copy that, of course, what I did for my vampires is can't have it like that. You even have Pam in True Blood. She's my favorite.
I'm a Pam fan too. I like, of course, I like, no surprise here, Eric Northman.
I do not like men that are blonde with eyes. I'm not normally attracted to them, but him.
I know. He's the hottest vampire ever.
And him and Pam together, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so she even mentions it that she preferred to go for people that were either vegetarian or vegan to keep the blood as pure.
Oh,
as
yeah.
Because, it's like mosquitoes. I've made the research again. Mosquitoes are more attracted to people that eat salty food or fat food because of the kind of sweat that they're going to leave, like the smell.
Right.
They're going to be attracted to it. While meat, if I was, they're not attracted to me because I eat super clean.
Mm-hmm.
So my sweat is not going to smell the same.
And by the way, the Moon King says, I'm loving the Wayne Enterprise shirt, though.
I know, right? Batman all over me. Anyway, thank you so much.
So, in your world that you've created, are there things that make vampires feel especially drunk, inebriated, maybe out of their minds, or in any kind of altered states?
Yes, I went exactly with the older the blood is, the more other vampires are attracted to it, and there is a reason to that because it's not all vampires; it's just a certain specific categories of vampires that I cannot mention now because I would ruin Punch for the series. But yeah, there is a smell because they all have super keen senses comparable to a wolf for the senses, except the jaw bite is comparable to a crocodile.
All right.
So the PSI of the crocodile bite is exactly the force a vampire has, according to Deadliest Warrior.
So I want to get into a slightly racy topic because you do have some scenes in your books.
Yeah.
Vampires and bedroom activities. What makes a vampire a good or a bad lover?
Well, vampires have super speed, so you can compare it to the Flash. You know, like all those jokes that are made about the superhero, the Flash. You know, he comes in a flash. So you have, you know, those vampires that are going to be it's all about me, while you have the others, you know, that are, it's like a man or a woman, you know, it's like, is it about you, is it about, you know, both, is it about the other person? So, I made that there was an adaptation for the vampire to go out with a human, because vampires having sex with another vampire, of course, they're going to be more bestial, they're going to be way more animalistic, they're going to bite each other, like, you know, there's no tomorrow and stuff, and they're going to inject their blood and drink their blood and blah, blah, blah. Well, to a human, you cannot do that, because that person, either is a woman or a man, that person's going to die. So, there is an adaptation that they have to make. So, it's going to depend on the vampires. If he only had sexual relations with other vampires, or if he had relations with humans.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what I believe.
Are there any disadvantages to getting with a vampire?
Yeah, I cannot see one.
Maybe if you don't like being bitten, that could maybe be an issue. But hey.
No, I love it.
Oh, that's funny. So, in your world, obviously we've got some vampires, and some of this is probably top secret. But are there other supernatural beings that you want to talk about or reveal? And if so, how many of them?
Yes, I actually have, like in Mrs. Blackwood, because I like to talk in my books about subjects that are that are actual, you know. And so I talk a lot about racism. I have racism amongst vampire, and I have it, you know, against all subspecies. So the vampire werewolves, where you have a difference between a lycan and the werewolves. The lycans are the ones that are actually born with the gene to give the others the possibility to become werewolves. So you have basically the pure and the ones that were humans that become werewolves. There are actually there are witches that are going to be in it, but those are not necessarily going to be like super powerful ones, because the ones that I wanted to give something special to were the humans that actually had that they are empaths, if you will. You know, they can feel what's to come, they can feel other people, and they can read their minds and all of those. So, and I try to go away from the stereotypical ones, except the werewolves, because mine are very special, you know, because of the werewolves.
Yes. Yes.
So they are very different than others, but I bring in wendigos that are not used very much. I believe only Supernatural brought them up so far.
Nice.
Skinwalkers. And so a lot of Native Americans.
Yes, and the Moon King, to answer you, that's true. You can also just send me a whisper and I will get you the Discord link. Apparently my Discord command in chat is broken, but the Moon King would like to join the Geek Initiative Discord, and we will be happy to see you in there, and I will send you that link later. Yeah, in my LARP world, so we've got vampires. I have already written a LARP about Fae, and I have also written a LARP, or I'm starting to write a LARP about witches. The LARP, like I said, the LARP about the vampires is an empowerment LARP, so it's going to focus on empowering people who are newly turned vampires. The one about Fae, it can be an empowerment experience for the players, but each Fae is actually some kind of cool creature from folklore. So you might be a Fae, but you might be playing Santa Claus, or you might be playing the Tooth Fairy, and people have to figure out, why the hell do you take kids' teeth? What's that about? Stuff like that. And some of them might be a little twisted. Some of them might be very pure of intention, but you'll be a Fae of some sort. And the witch one, I'm going in the direction of making it, I'm actually thinking about maybe collaborating with somebody on this, and maybe especially collaborating with a woman of color on this, and to really make it a more intersectional experience. And I want to focus on the different stages that witchcraft in like is represented by Wicca and a lot of other neo-pagan faiths represents. So they focus a lot on this maiden, mother, crone cycle of life reflected in our triple moon that we see. And I want to dissect that because I have some issues with it, but I also relate to it, and I think there's a lot to explore in there.
That could be one too that you can bring in, because you have the priestess, but you also have voodoo witches that are different. I made a bit of research on that because I wanted to include them in my vampire world as well. So yeah, they're very interesting. The history is amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. It is going to be a women's experience, so right now most of my digital LARPs, usually I have about 65% women, and the rest are men. And occasionally we have some non-binary folks join us as well, which is cool. But mostly women play my games. It makes sense. That's kind of my brand. The Geek Initiative is about women in geek culture. So usually everybody's welcome at the table. But the Witches game is going to be a little bit of a different experience. And I'm also thinking about talking, because I have a Josh Heath, who runs HLG Con, for anyone in the New Jersey, Philadelphia area. He's a good friend of mine, and he does great work. And when I ran Chariot LARP and sold out 6 runs, I hired him actually to run one of them. And I was thinking, after doing the Witches LARP, how cool would it be to also, maybe even at the same time, have a LARP from men running where they explore aspects of masculinity. Because I see men talking about this all the time on Facebook, because they want to still be a man without being like an asshole, right? And Josh is pretty good at doing that. So he might be a great person to GM that, and to kind of run the guys through that experience, and setting it in this paranormal world would be really cool. And then all of my LARPs are continuity LARPs. So what happens in session 1 of First Bite is going to affect run 2. So each run has like 3 sessions. So run 1, its 3rd session might happen after run 2's 1st session. And some of the players and their characters may even interact. So the things you do in your LARP are going to impact the next run. It's going to impact the legacy of the world. And I'm even thinking it's going to be a bigger project, right? Because all these creatures are in one setting. It's not like, okay, I'm doing a LARP about vampires and then we're going to go do a sci-fi game again. It's all in the same world. And so by the time we get to the witches and whatever we do for the men, it's going to be in a very different world than the one that we're starting in pre-vampire, right? And the other thing I really have to decide, and I love your expert opinion on this, is in this world, are vampires out? Because in Charlene Harris's world, they come out and it presents problems because people are bigoted because some vampires do cause violence, and then there's an incident on national television in True Blood, which definitely creates some division among the mortals. And I also have to decide, like, do we want to do that? And I'm thinking about dropping some stuff in. And I wonder if any of my players are watching. If there aren't, they'll probably watch the thing because I told them that the recording, because I told them that there would be hints. I was thinking about dropping a plot item, and letting them know, like when they ask the Senior and Vampires questions and stuff, that humans have an idea that we as vampires are around. We obviously have made it into some of their folklore, but it's not like we're known to be real. It's like most people think we're imaginary. And Vampire the Masquerade tackles this in a really specific way. It's a pervasive LARP. So what they do is they're actually like LARPing in public and LARPing in the world around them, and they have to keep up the masquerade. And that's kind of how that world handles it, which I think is pretty neat. I think I want to go with the whole like keep hidden kind of stuff and see how that goes. But Alexa, what do you think about it? Do you think I should have vampires be like completely hidden, or do you think that it's a cool story when they're integrated into society at the beginning of the story? And how is it in your story?
Well, like Sean Harris says, she played on words with, coming out of the closet for the vampire that was coming out of the coffin, which I found was very clever. And you see what that generated with humans. Me, I find that it would go exactly like with aliens. Everybody would cover it up. The government can be aware of it, but it would be covered up for the rest of the people. That's how I do it in my novels. You have, of course, the biggest religions know. So the 3 big ones know about it. And of course, vampires help them get where they are. And then you have the government and politics. Them too. Vampires help them. Scratch my back, I scratch yours. So that they get their hands on what they want, while humans get what they want. So, but always people in power.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in my world, the vampires, you have the idealist ones, which are the vampires that want to be equals with humans. They want the humans to be seen as equals, mostly because vampires believe that they are superiors, and then they fight for that. While you have the conservatives, which want to keep it like the Dark Ages. So, for your LARP, I believe that what you could do is you could have those, give them the liberty to debate. Not me, I want to be out, and I want the humans to be my states, and then those who wants to fight against us, and say, no, I remember you were human yesterday.
And that's an interesting allegory, and it's something that people played a lot with in a LARP that I frequent called New World Magischola, which is Wizard College, basically. And there are some vampires at Wizard College, but people fear vampires. And some people definitely played really strongly with the idea of coming out as a vampire and and what that feels like. And for a lot of people who were queer, that was a really strong moment for them and a very fragile thing for them to play with. And the very first game of that, which I was at, was about this time of year, a couple years ago, and it was right after the Pulse nightclub shooting. And so it was a really sensitive time, and we all kind of, everybody got together in this community that was very inclusive and embracing, and people felt safe to play that out. And I thought it was really, really cool. Hey, the Moon King, you did not miss too much. Had a couple trolls, banned them. We kept talking about vampires and whether or not they're like publicly known in our different worlds. So that's kind of what's going on here. But before we kind of wrap things up a little bit here, I am curious to know, in addition to vampire type stuff and these supernatural things, what else you write and what you're interested in writing.
Okay, well, I write about pirates because I am a nerd for them. And Tara has already edited my first one.
I love it.
It's a series that is called Mermaid Island. And the first book, called The Knot, will be coming out soon. And I also write superhero novels and sci-fi. They all have a twist of horror in them. I am a complete nerd, so that's why it's mostly paranormal, pirates, and sci-fi and superheroes.
Nice. So if people want to know more about you and find out about your books, where should they go?
Well, I am on Facebook. You can just write Alexa Wayne. You're going to find me very easily because it's a drawing of the vampire.
Because you're also an artist. That's the thing we didn't touch upon, but you're also an artist. And with the books that I'm working on, I'm so excited because you'll be able to do the layout on the covers. I'm working on a nonfiction book called The Geek Initiative Guide to Personal Branding, and very different than the vampire stuff that we're both working on right now. But I'm excited to get that going. And yeah, you also do amazing art. I should point that out. Amazing and reasonably priced art too, especially for those cute portrait pictures. So they can find you on Facebook by looking up Alexa Wayne.
Yes, and they can find me on Twitter at AW Vampire Expert. And you can also find me on DeviantArt, Alexa Wayne. And for Pinterest, it's mostly Gothic Vibe magazine, where I post stuff as well, and the articles that we write about.
Fantastic. You can find me at geekinitiative.com, facebook.com/TaraWrites, or facebook.com/ChariotLARP if you're interested in LARPing stuff. That'll bring you right there. And anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up, Alexa?
Well, I would like to say that if you drop by Amazon and look at my book, if you buy the paperback, you have the digital copy for free. And I think the rest is like, if you want to find me, you really just write Alexa Wayne, and you're going to find me everywhere. And yeah, I write and I draw, and I also write comic book scripts, so I can do that as well.
Excellent. Well, congratulations, and I'm so excited that your book is finally out. And thank you so much for joining me on Paranormal Live.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great night.
You